let me say this. All my bills are paid. And so if I am able to decide this is the allotment of money that I'm saving and everything else is up, I think that is a great lifestyle.
I don't need to be in my bank account every other day stressing about every nickel, dime, penny. But I do need to know where my money is going and to make sure I have enough when that auto renew bill hits.
And I feel like that's the hard part that always gets me stuck too. It's like, I'm going to have to learn how to make money in a more efficient way or strategic that requires me less effort long term.
You have to seek that for yourself. It's not something that's going to be given to you because the wealthy at the end of the day don't want us all to be wealthy. Let's keep it a buck.
I don't know. Would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now. Welcome back to Sistas Declassified. We're the real life sisters who decided to start a podcast instead of going broke.
But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe for your weekly dose of declassified moments.
And for today, we're going to get into a little declassified gospel. Amen, amen. Adulting taught me two things. Be delulu, but check your statements. Okay? Check those statements. I feel like how I interpret this is like, I don't need to be in my bank account every other day stressing about every nickel, dime, penny. But I do need to know where my money is going and to make sure I have enough when that auto renew bill hits.
Absolutely. Because I don't actually have any, besides my subscriptions, I don't really have any bills that auto renew.
But like when you say subscriptions, I was like, when you say subscriptions, I feel like subscriptions we used to just apply to one thing, and now every company's got a subscription or some sort of renewal service.
That's true. And I will say, I do love a good PayPal Pay in 4, and those things will sneak up on you.
Yeah, I purposefully don't do any sort of those breakdown payments, but I think this topic came to me because just the other day, a content creator I follow, I can't remember her last name, her first name is Amber. Maybe I'll link the video so you can see the whole thing. But as you guys may or may not know, if this is your first time watching, I am very pregnant. And I've lately been trying to follow a few more creators who are also pregnant or maybe have kids. And Amber and her husband Ben just had their second child. And she was sharing in her stories one day about the bill she got from the hospital. So like with insurance, she just got hit with a bill for about $4,500. And she was like, cool, you know, that like my insurance did a lot. I know America is expensive because it is expensive. But we can do this. We can make this work. $4,000. We got it. That's a few more Patreon episodes or whatever. So the next day she goes to pay the bill and it is doubled. So it's now like nearly $9,000, $10,000. And she's like, hold the phone. Obviously the hospital fucked up. They charged me twice. Let me call my insurance. Let them know, hey, what's going on? Seems like something's wrong. She calls, ring. They were like, no, that's correct. We've now added the charges for the baby. And she said, the baby? You mean the one who wouldn't have anywhere else to go besides out when I delivered them? How do they cost the same as me for a hospital stay for a couple days?
They had an overnight stay just like you.
Yeah. And then that just sent me down a rabbit hole because as I've been preparing, like, I know that America sucks when it comes to healthcare. Like there are countries that let you have babies for free, like your tax money pays for any and everyone to have that gosh darn baby, right? And even your postpartum care. But it just like got me thinking I need to be checking in on my insurance, see how much this is going to cost, because then I of course spiraled and found stories of people who, you know, ended up staying more days than they thought or had a child in the NICU or they themselves had some sort of complication that required them to stay more than 2 days or so. And people are leaving the hospital with like $40,000 bills for having a baby. Yeah. And that's with insurance. I know you're trying to be supportive over here.
I'm in shock right now. Like, yeah, more and more have that baby at home. You're built for that.
Yes. I mean, I do plan to do a hospital birth. And now going back to like checking your statements, like be Delulu. This is going to be great. I'm going to have a great birth story. The child will be healthy. I will be healthy. We will only stay the minimum required stay.
Right.
And that will cost what it costs. But I got to call to figure out what that's going to cost.
You get your itemized receipt.
And get my itemized receipt, because it seems to always drop a little bit when you ask, well, what am I paying for? Because then they run it back like, oops, we can't just charge you whatever we feel like it. But I don't want to be surprised like Amber was surprised.
Right.
So I need to go back and check on my process.
But that takes away from the Delulu of it all.
But I think, I think that's how we came up with the declassified moment for today, because I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle of the two of us. Like I said, I'm not somebody who's like constantly checking my bank account, but I do have a general idea of what's in it. If I can budget well enough to put things on auto pay, then I do, so that I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. I will say, I think I live a life where I'm like, I don't have to think about it, but I do also check my bank account every day.
Every day?
Yeah, because you're not about to play with me. I know how much is in my account. Every account. Like, I would just hate to be, what happened that one day is a glitch and all your money gone, or they just, I don't know. I have too many conspiracy theories. Because what if somebody is just slowly taking out $10 from your account every day?
I would notice. I would notice that.
Week. You might not.
I would.
I
pay enough attention to it.
Right. But some people don't check enough. And so I feel like that's where the check your statement comes in for me, because I feel like it's not your statement. No. You need to check your account.
She said, know that dollar amount.
Please be aware. Because there are little subscriptions that sneak up on you that you don't know that you still have. Or my bank all of a sudden just decided now I have a $12 service fee.
Huh?
Exactly. Huh? Where'd that come from? Because I ain't never had a $12 service fee, and I just saw that yesterday. And you know why I noticed? Because I check daily. So we're going to figure that out. But
I don't know. I feel like sometimes checking that often can feel a little, for me, it induces a little bit of anxiety and can feel like restrictive if I'm checking every day. Because I do actually want to live in Delulu. When I think about how I want to manage my money, I want to have a general idea of what like my basic bills and things that I expect to pay for cost. Have accounts set up so that the money goes to that. I don't even account for that as my money. That's just like the money I need to live. And then the rest is what I decide to do with.
Which that's how they say the wealthy live, right? Like
that's what I want to be.
But I think I still live like that, but I'm gonna still know how much is in my account. So there's just that. I don't think it feels restrictive to me. I think that just allows me to be fully aware.
Okay.
But I could see how it would cause anxiety as you think about like, I want to do this thing or I want to do this thing. And I'm looking at how much money is in this account and all these things
not matching. It's not matching.
But I think that's just kind of where budgeting comes into play. So like if you know what your budget is, opening your account and looking at it shouldn't cause you distress.
Right. I guess that's true. Yeah. I think just checking it every day against the things that I might see in the world that I want, knowing that there are things outside of my budget and that my desires change on a whim. I think that's where the stress comes in. It's like, oh, I saw this thing on the gram, or I saw these clothes or this outfit or this thing I think I want to buy or sounds good. You go to check the account and the account's like, not this week.
But you see, if you check every day, you don't even got to open that account to be let down. Because as soon as you see that thing you want, you can be like, not this week. Right? Because I automatically already know it's not happening.
I guess that's true. But I think
or I know it's not happening and it can happen this day. Because I know when the next money is going to hit.
Yeah. I think for me, it's probably more based in like not really knowing what I want my quote unquote rich life to be yet. I think growing up, I feel like, and maybe you can tell me if you got this lesson too, but I feel like between Papa and Dad is where I heard this the most. And maybe that's because Papa told Dad this. But it was always like, whatever money you get, make sure you put 10% away for yourself for something fun or in your savings for something else in the future. And so I think I have I am blessed to have a nice looking savings account. We've recovered since the wedding, Lord have mercy. But I don't necessarily have those funds like put away for anything in particular. Like they're not broken down by like a trip money or emergency fund money, right? It's just like money. And so I think part of when I see things and I'm not sure if I could buy it, it's like, well, do I want to pull for my savings for this? I don't know, because I actually haven't like budgeted or allocated money in my savings the same way, because I'm just used to squirreling away or saving a certain amount without actually going the next step of determining what that money is for.
And see, I feel like I'm kind of the opposite, where I mean, yes, there was definitely conversations about having money for fun, but I feel like I had more conversations around having money for emergency. And so, like, always have your $100 emergency money in your wallet.
That's true.
That was from our mama. And so I feel like that was a big messaging. But as long as you have your emergency money, live life is how I interpreted that. And so I'll have my side emergency money. You know, make sure you could pay your rent twice or whatever. But at the end of the day, everything else is up. Until, like you said, I know exactly what I want for myself later, because you can save and save and save, but that money isn't going to go with you. Right. So if you don't know what you want, then that means it's a time to ball out.
See, I don't know about that. I think
I'm not saying irresponsibly.
Right.
Well, maybe I am.
I was like, it sounds like it, Mr. Lulu.
Let me say this. All my bills are paid. I live very comfortably. And so if I am able to decide this is the allotment of money that I'm saving and everything else is up, I think that is a great lifestyle.
I agree with that. And I think, as I think about the fact that this is the same paycheck that my coworkers are paying for their children on, I'm like, my husband and I need to sit down and recalibrate how this money looks, because 2 months of rent when it's two adults who, like, at the end of the day, if we needed to sleep in a car because we had to, I would not feel great about that. But we would do it, versus two adults and a child or a baby in the car. I would feel differently about that. And so, like, the level of emergency preparedness I need is different. The amount of emergency funds I need is different. And so I think that's what I'm thinking about. And so when it comes to, like, can I spend this little money for fun? No, because new emergencies might be coming up that I'm not totally prepared for mentally or financially.
Right. And I think that's the mental shift between a parent and, you know, me not being a parent. So right now it's just not, I only got to take care of me. And obviously I have a partner. We take care of each other. That's all we got to focus on. So sure, when I go into having a child, will I look at that differently? Absolutely. Because they have a life as well that they'll need to live. But I think this is a good time of life. There's two parts. I do think it's a good time of life to build your assets and build your ability to have generational wealth or whatever you aspire to have in your life. But I also think it's a time to, like, make mistakes and explore and not have it all figured out, because I don't have children.
Right.
So that's where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have my little
20s.
saving side. Well, and it's almost over. So I'm like, I think that's part of it too. My 20s is literally over in 3 months. So I'm right now having a ball.
Ball out, sis, ball out.
Because as you get older, you just have more responsibility until you don't. And so at this point, it's a good time for me to be Delulu.
Yeah, I definitely view money differently in my 30s than I do in my 20s, but I was always fortunate enough to never feel like I was not knowing where my next meal was coming from or whether or not I'd have a roof over my head. So amen to our parents and their financial savvy that kept us living comfortably.
Definitely. And I think trying to also hold on to what they're saying now about, like, they're both focused on having wealth and retirement. And I think I do want to hold on to the thought of, like, how do I make sure I'm established enough by that period of time where I don't have to learn it then.
Yeah.
And they are trying to name that for us. Like, you don't want to be learning this when you're 60.
Right. Because you want to be living your best retired life doing what you want to do, kind of almost going back to your 20s,
right?
When you can have your fun money and not be as stressed and have a few bills on auto pay and have the government slide your check in, whatever, Social Security, what have you.
Because they will be when we're 60.
I know. I'm like, we're paying in Social Security for what?
Seriously. Well, you're right. We're not about to get it. So I think that's something to really think about, where that's why I feel like this is my last hurrah year.
Well, you'll last hurrah 3 months.
3 months, but I did just book a trip to Costa Rica.
You did?
In November.
This
so
is the first time hearing
more
of
than
this.
3 months. I did, because why not?
Are you going with friends? Are you
nope,
going by
this
yourself?
is my solo trip that I've been wanting to do. I mentioned it on here that I had wanted to do a solo trip, I think for my last birthday. And this herbalist I follow, obviously I've been sharing, like, I want to be a naturopathy and like have herbal business, blah, blah, blah. But I've always wanted a teacher. And I think a lot of people are very knowledgeable, but I don't know that I would relate to them. And so this person I've been following for a long time, maybe 4 or 5 years. So not that long, but 4 or 5 years is a decent enough time to know that, okay, they seem reputable.
And they're consistent.
Exactly. So she's hosting it. She's taking 10 people. And I was like, bet. So.
Okay. Well, my friend Natalie, who you may or may not remember.
Nope.
That's where her family's from. So we'll just make sure you got some emergency contacts while you're there on your solo trip with these people you ain't never met.
That sounds good. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a great way to support a Black business and also to grow myself and create a community around an area that I'm interested in. And could be another financial avenue for me, right? As we like talk about Black women, we often, talk about how we're creating this wealth gap or whatever. Like in this timeline of life where, like, being 30, I think we're all expected to have it together.
Right.
And there's this like what you were saying, I'm building up this money for what? And I think going on this trip is this is the kind of things you built your money up for, because it's going to push me towards some of my dreams, which has been really nice. Like, that is something that maybe you can reflect on, is like, what are my dreams?
Well, girl, my dream is to not have to work. And so I recognize that in order to do that, there has to be some more work put in right now to create some sort of cushion, but also figuring out how to be more savvy with my money. And I think something that is challenging, not in like a bad way, but just in it is way. I'm not doing that alone because I have a husband, right? And so in some ways, not in all aspects, because I think the way that we deal with our money, we have our joint things and then we have our separate things, but it requires us to move together in some ways. And so it's not just like me making decisions all the time, which has its pros and cons, I think. And so having money conversations was very big for me before we got married. Like, we read a couple books before we got married and after, just to really make sure around money specifically.
What books?
Oh shoot, now you're gonna have to make me try to remember the names of the books,
child. It's okay if you don't remember.
I do not.
But I am curious, because I do think that your money in partnerships is hard. yeah. And I like knew that, and so preemptively was like, we gonna try to make this easier by almost bringing in like a neutral third party, in this case a book, to kind of help us have conversations we probably wouldn't otherwise have, because it's helpful to know how your partner thinks about money, so that when life gets more stressful, because it inevitably will, especially if you bring in kids or if there's any sort of like medical emergency or life emergency, like, money is a resource at the end of the day. And so knowing how each other operates with that resource is super important. And so I think when I think about what do I want to do for myself or for fun, I want to not work one day in the near future. And I just don't currently see how that's possible. And it requires a lot of planning, both independently, but also together. And then that's just like work. Right. And like, for somebody who doesn't want to work, now I want to add some more work to figure out how to not work. It feels, but I know it's so much work on the front end, right? It's not even work long term. And I feel like that's the hard part that always gets me stuck too. It's like, I'm going to have to learn. I'm going to have to learn how to make money in a more efficient way or strategic, sure, that requires me less effort long term. Right. It's really difficult.
And I feel like the world doesn't really teach, or society doesn't teach us how to do that. School doesn't teach us how to do that, really. You have to seek that for yourself. It's not something that's going to be given to you, because the wealthy, at the end of the day, don't want us all to be wealthy. Mm-hmm. Let's keep it a buck.
But they also do kind of share tips. It's just like, I feel like we often are like, that doesn't actually work. Or you just got lucky. I feel like it's sometimes the mindset. I'm not saying everybody believes that.
Mm-hmm. And I think to that end, social media also makes things seem more simplified than they are. Mm-hmm. And so you can watch as many YouTube videos or read as many books or whatever, but if you don't actually apply the principles, then yeah, you're right. It's not going to work because you didn't actually do the steps they said to do.
Right. Like people who used to do Forex or whatever, like that used to be like, oh, that's a scam. And I did it for a while and I can clearly see that it's not a scam. But you do also have to have the discipline to get on every day. Excuse me. You have to have the emotional discipline to not go into trades when it's not a good time to go into a trade, or to take a trade that's bigger than your percentage goal for the day. There's like so many emotional factors, I think, tied to people's financial success.
Yeah, that we kind of discount when we think about the quote unquote luck that plays into people's financial gains or successes. It's like, yes, it is true that we are all born in different stations in life. And so there are some people who are set up, I guess, to be more financially successful or to have more access to resources than others. And then there's just a very real like life of it all too. There are things that happen in life that are out of our control that may cause us to have less access to money outside of just like where you're born, but also like what happens to you based on what you look like or where you grew up or what have you. But there is the opportunity for everyone to, I think, generally find comfort and success if you define what comfort and success means for you, because I think that's the other piece of it. Like, I think social media gives us a glimpse into how quote unquote other people live. And that's how we think they live. That's just what they show us.
Right.
A lot of people be in debt. Like I'd be wondering how many of my friends are in debt. Not because I think they live like some flashy lifestyle, but just because I'd be wondering. And it still feels, I feel like our generation is maybe a little more open to talking about money than previous generations, but it still feels taboo. But well, like, and I will say it's like combos like this.
I think people are open to talking about money, but I also feel like people maybe aren't going to fully name if they're doing flashy things that are putting them in debt. I don't think people really discuss that.
That's fair. Like I have debt, but I also have enough cash to pay off my debt right now if I needed to. But I would also, in addition to that, need to spend less. Right.
Same. Because anyway, same. But I think also there's people who understand like what is worth going into debt for and what is not.
Well, and even further than that, I think we all just have different definitions of what's worth it. Like some people think it's worth going into debt to take their kids to Disneyland because they want their kids to have XYZ experience. Other people would be like, my kids ain't going to Disneyland.
We got Disneyland at home. I will turn on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We can make a water slide outside.
Yeah, lately I've been watching a lot of like, I don't know how to categorize them, but there are creators on YouTube who do like financial audits with people, and so they'll like go through their statements and talk about how much money they have, how much debt they have, etc. And it's just amazing what people feel like is worth it. And you have to catch yourself because I'd be a little judgy, like, does it make sense to go to Disneyland every year if you can't afford to go every year? And you also don't put yourself in a situation where you're saving to go to that thing, but you also throw in 4 other trips that weren't planned with Disneyland. But
she's talking to me, y'all. No, but I'm not. Let me take that back. I did go into debt for one trip, and that was your bachelorette.
Girl, me too.
So I will own that. But otherwise, you're right. I'm not going to go on a trip that's going to put me into debt.
But for some people, travel is like everything. And so they will go into debt to have that experience or to see the world or to show their kids the world or to say they went somewhere or whatever.
Well, because, I mean, I need to do more understanding of what happens to your debt when you die. But I kind of feel it.
Does it get passed on to your kin?
I don't know. Should we pause and Google that? Because I am a little bit curious. Because, hold on. Okay, so basically, if you have insufficient funds and your estate doesn't have enough assets to cover all debts, creditors may only receive partial payment and remaining debt is typically discharged. So fuck all y'all. No, I know that's not good advice. And I think it would be good for us to further educate ourselves on this topic and come back with actual good information. But my real thoughts right now, run up the debt. Because realistically, fine, pay your minimum payment. And if that minimum payment gets crazy, that's the thing. So maybe you have multiple lines of credit.
Yeah, I don't know about the advice Taylor's
I'm
giving
totally
y'all right
joking.
now.
I'm really joking. Obviously, I think running up crazy debt is not a smart decision. But I do, for what your example was, which is having an experience with your kids and your family, and you do that once a year, and you are able to pay it back down, I think that's the piece. If you are able to pay it back down, because you don't want to have high amounts of credit where you have to pay a huge credit card bill every month that also gains interest.
Right.
So
yeah, that was what I was like.
That's what I was joking.
Running that.
Yes, I'm joking.
And when I watch these shows, there are people with like, and this is what, if you have student loan debt specifically, I feel like that is kind of different. That's a different sort of investment. But there are people who just have like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 or $100,000 worth of credit card debt specifically. And I'm like, what are you paying for? That said, what they do career-wise also varies in where they are in life. Some of these people are like fresh out of college, and if they had to pay for school themselves, that's part of where that debt comes from. But again, I look at student loan debt very differently than like life debt. But
even medical debt, like the way that we started this conversation, you have a medical thing that happens and now you're $40,000 up.
Yeah. I guess, education, medical, I look at as like, I think an education, generally speaking, depending on trade and industry, can give you a leg up in life later on, or at least can make you more hireable depending on the field you'd like to get into. Medical debt is usually unavoidable.
But also, I just feel like we can't put these very I think there's a lot more scenarios for how people can run up debt. That's all.
Yes, there are a lot.
Just because, like,
of scenarios.
Once you have a child, you might clearly see it, right? Like diapers cost.
Oh no, I do see it, right? I do see it right now. That's why it's stressing me out right now.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, those things, taking care of your family, it could probably become very easy to run up $100,000.
Girl, don't put that on me.
I'm sorry. I'm not saying you will do that, but when you said I don't know how it's possible, I think it's easy to do.
Okay. If you have, sure. It is not impossible. I'm just saying, when we talked earlier about checking your statements and managing your budget and sticking to your budget, etc., at least when I'm watching these YouTube shows, those people aren't doing that. Now, do I think there are people in the world who like life be happening to, and they want to also be able to provide
It's like the Straw movie. Did you watch it?
I did not, because me and Tyler Perry do not go together.
I know. Brandon was pissed the whole movie.
I just can't.
He's like, they just brushed over the fact that she killed 2 people. He couldn't get over that because he was
spoiler alert.
Sorry. I mean, that was like in the very first 2 minutes. It wasn't like,
okay.
It's not a big, well, this was his point. It's not a big part of the story, but they just murdered 2 people. And like, that's just glossed over. Like, it's not a big deal. But
I can't do Tyler Perry. I need him to move on from struggling Black women as his main characters.
I agree. And he keeps saying, he said he was telling the stories of all the women in his life.
He got murderers and
that's what I said.
Victims, and Lord.
But anyways, we won't go on our tangent.
But people keep watching it. People like, you keep watching it, so you keeping him in business.
And that's what Brandon said.
And then you also go on to hear, I mean, I know we going on a tangent right now, but this is important.
Right.
He obviously has done a lot of amazing things for the community, but I also hear he's like not that great of a person, which is interesting.
Shocker.
I know. And it's just like, go tell a black man's story. Do that.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
I might feel differently.
Why don't you tell stories about stuff that's about you?
Yes.
And your experience.
Exactly.
Y'all need elevation too.
Yeah. Therapy, elevation. I just feel like, why does everything you put out have to be about a black woman struggling? Like, you think you're the only person who knows somebody's sad story? Like, we live life.
But also, you can't even relate.
Right. It's just like, I would love for him to maybe have more stories from a male perspective. Mm-hmm. I think I would feel differently about that and have less criticism for it, because I'm not a black man. So I can't speak
I just
want to
know
life.
What agenda, who's paying him. But
anyway, girl, you watching it.
Listen, I watch a lot of things that get canceled. So there's a reason why he's allowed to keep going.
Right, because he's
perpetuating terrible stories.
Yeah. And I think the Medea plays were great for what they were. They were like novel. I even think a movie or two were cool. But then we just kept going. And it's been like 15.
Around like Diary of a Mad Black Woman. That was around the time to wrap it up.
It's been about 15, maybe 20 years of this.
Yes. But okay.
Sorry.
We're talking about finances today.
Right.
And you know what? He is
a rich man.
And I will say he supports his actors in becoming abundantly successful in their careers, at least when they continue to work for him.
Right. Taraji be getting her check from him.
She do. But I think that just kind of leads me into our final area discussing this is just, I kind of mentioned this already, but I try to live in an abundant mindset, meaning that anything that I want, I can achieve. But going back to what you said, if I want those things, what is my budget? Mm-hmm. And do I need to have a budget in order to achieve that? Because like I said, I do check my bank account every day, and I think I'm very aware of like the money coming in, the money coming out, to know if something I want is achievable without doing anything or not. Because I think that's the thing. I have enough money, but it's just how I manage it is what is going to allow me to live the life that I want to live. And that's just more of a mindset thing than it is your work ethic. Because I think people are like, I have to keep working. I have to work all the time. I have to have 2 jobs. I need to have what's passive forms of income in order to have the life I want. And I just don't. I agree to an extent.
Right. I think it goes back to what I said earlier in terms of what I need to focus on in my mindset is, what is my money for? Have I clearly defined what it is I would consider a good life or a quality life, and how much does that cost? And get real specific. Does it mean I have a cleaner coming once a month? Does it mean I have certain subscriptions that allow me to free up my time to have more fun or do less work, right? Do I have passive forms of income that allow me to see my retirement plan happen sooner? It's about having the strategy in place to get to the life you want, instead of just like grinding because you feel like you don't have enough. And it's like, enough compared to who?
Right. And I think that also goes back to the gratitude space of, you don't realize you're probably living more of the life you want than you think, because you're not pausing to be grateful for where you're at. Because when I'm like, oh, I would love to have a house, right? But if I really sit and pause, I actually really like my house. And I like the fact, or my apartment. And I like the fact that when something breaks, I could call so-and-so and he gonna come fix it and I don't gotta do nothing. Right? That is still the luxury that I would desire, right? Having somebody to fix something for me. And unfortunately, we just broke something and it is gonna cost us. But usually in an apartment, right, when stuff break, they pay for it. That's actually a nice way to live. But I have to have that gratitude and awareness that there are things about where I'm at right now that are luxurious and that I take for granted. Because then when you level up, you don't appreciate it.
Absolutely. Like like I said earlier, I appreciate that my basic necessities are met. And I have extra funds to play with and save with.
Right. I was about to say, and then some.
Mm-hmm. And everybody doesn't necessarily have that ability. And to knowing that I was able to, you know, I was gonna say do that on my own, but girl, I live with my mama, so I did it with my mama, and now I can do it with my man's. And that's a blessing because everybody can't do that. And I definitely know people who end up like going back and forth, living with family or living out of a car, or just having struggles that I don't know that I'd be strong enough to manage through. And so I can definitely have some gratitude in like what I have now. And Taylor always reminds me, girl, you just got 2 promotions at work. You be talking about you broke, but you got promotions.
Because nothing about her is broke. And that's the abundance. That's the abundance piece that I think is so important. But I think something we always grew up with, right? Is you see your parents have money. We never really wanted for things. Like maybe every kid wants for things that they can't have. But like for our basic needs, they were always met.
Yep.
And then
some.
And so I think we have to.
Our standard is different.
Yes.
Than some other people's.
Yes.
Is what I've come to learn.
And so it's not that you can't have the things that you want. You trying to live a bougie life.
Girl, I am.
And I think maybe we all have to. I mean, I think we can all own that, right? Because that's why the soft life era and all that stuff is going around.
But you got to define it for yourself and be realistic.
And what is that all white blank house with 50,000 square feet? What is that going to do for you? Because you're still going to be lonely.
Not lonely.
For real. Like when you are striving to get all that money to accumulate all of that stuff, you stop realizing if people actually like you for you or just your stuff. You probably had to isolate yourself to get that money up in the first place. So then you lost friends or family. Well, let me not say that. Some people elevate and it's easy. But from what I understand, once you get to a level of success that you are doing whatever you want all the time, people feel like you're untouchable and unapproachable and not relatable.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. So I think
don't let capitalism fool you. Amassing things, having a big house, even traveling the world. Traveling the world is really fun.
But it also you be traveling, girl.
I do. But I try to do it with intention. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
We should talk about that one day. Traveling with intention. Y'all let us know if you want to talk about that. How we gonna wrap this up, girl? Something we wish our younger selves knew.
Budget like you're broke and believe like you're rich. Because yeah, I think if we believe that our current life in the current state that it's at, like that we were wealthy and rich, I think we would achieve and get things that we want to have.
Yeah. And I'll add on to that by saying rich doesn't necessarily just mean financially. There are other ways in life to be rich. And so when you think about what your rich life looks like, also consider how you may be rich outside of your dollar signs.
Especially if you live in America. For real.
Yeah.
Because I think
you're right. We're not as grateful. We're not as
grateful. And I feel like love to say we're living in this dystopian society.
Which
I'm not saying that we're not. But just take a moment to just see your blessing.
I think a lot of the conveniences we have in America allow us to disassociate from like the struggle of life in some ways, and there are pros and cons to that.
I agree. But anyway, to wrap us up today, just focus on budgeting yourself. Think about what you really want, because that's, I think, the biggest key. Once you know what you really want and laser focus,
you'll be good to go.
So I guess our Sister Circle question for today is, how do you balance living in abundance with balancing your real life and paying bills? Because, yeah, I think that's where we ultimately got to today. And I think we've kind of answered that for ourselves already. So just drop your comments below. How do you balance it? Do you live more delulu? Do you check your statements? What do you do? Do you just decide to run up the credit?
Let go and let God.
But yeah, this conversation went all over the place. But drop your comments below and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.